When I joined the school almost 4 years ago, I was, let's say, a little bit out of shape. I was actually using a different word, but they made me redact it. Quite an exciting time, new country, new people, new school. We moved into a nice house in a nice area, actually not too far from here. And next to our house, we had a hill. It's about a 1 kilometer stretch that goes through the woods uphill and then sort of plateaus at the top. Obviously, sooner rather than later, my dad dragged me along to one of his evening runs. We left the house, started uphill, and in about 3 minutes I was giving off my last breaths. I struggled through barely 3 kilometers of pure torture and came home completely exhausted. This repeated a few more times. I guess my dad still had some hopes of me losing some of my 85 kg at the time, but we didn't get further than some 3 sessions. Now, fast forward a year, my weight dropped down below 60 kg. Now, I'm not here to discuss physical or mental health implications of that. Definitely don't take any of this as an advice, but one of the sunny September days, I remembered the agony that I was going through about a year ago. I grabbed my shoes, left the house, alone this time, and hit my first non-stop 5K of pure running. I've been running weekly ever since. So, what's the point of this introduction? The whole 1 year weight loss journey was obviously not a walk in the park. It was a run in the woods. But as some of you probably know, losing weight is not complicated. It is hard. There's a very important distinction here. The mechanics are really simple. Less calories in, more calories out equals weight loss. But it can be freakishly hard to do. And that is what this TED Talk is about. Like I've said, it's not about weight loss, it's not about running, and it's not about hills. It is about what makes us do those big, overwhelming things, our motivation. So, motivation was seen as a good thing for a while now, right? Motivational videos, books, coaching, self-help, loads of money made on that type of content, praising the concept itself and inventing new different ways to unlock your inner motivation reserves. From sweet treats and rewards through cold showers and ice plunges, all the way to dopamine detoxes and yoga, you name it. But lately, I've been noticing a curious trend. Discipline over motivation. Lots of new content has morphed to praise this white knuckle kind of lock-in approach to pretty much anything that we do. The notion of motivation itself is becoming more and more associated with basically a waste of time. The bottom line claim is that you should do the thing regardless of how you're feeling about it and whether you're feeling motivated to do so. The issue here, in my opinion, is in our definition of motivation. I gave it a little thought and it appears to me that this is where we go wrong. Motivation doesn't imply getting into a zone where every event of your effort causes no resistance. On the contrary, it assumes that there is a resistance in doing hard things, but the motivation itself acts as fuel or sort of rails that we slide along. I can see how one can keep breaking himself every time an action is needed, but I doubt the sustainability of this approach. How long can you keep pushing, ignoring everything around you? Eventually you will snap. All of us have. I imagine that everyone's breaking point is different, but mine, for example, doesn't appear to be that remote, only 3 runs up that hill. But my point is, discipline and motivation, they're not two parallel lines. I see motivation as a wider overarching entity. It can similarly result in or be reinforced by our discipline. All right, so now to the main part. Mark Manson. It's actually supposed to be a picture, but copyright. Mark Manson is the guy who loves putting swear words in his book titles. He explained that we tend to think of our motivation as a linear sequence of emotional inspiration, which is then followed by a spark of some motivation, which then leads to a desirable action. He then describes this, an endless loop, which consists of 3 elements and appears to keep going forever as we progress through our lives. Each element within the loop creates a further influence and carries over into the future. This is something that I will later refer to as inertia. So Mark's concept is a fair representation, but let me present my vision of this. I find it a little bit more accurate, let's say. So let's begin with the idea of 3 key segments or elements or entry points. Mark defines motivation and inspiration as 2 separate entities. Like I mentioned before, I see motivation as this grand encompassing entity. It is what is generated within the loop, and it is what makes us achieve those big things. So to be more precise, let's swap out motivation for inspiration. Now, where do we put this point? How much inertia does inspiration give us? I'd say not a whole lot. An emotional inspiration is great. It feels nice, it makes us come up with new aims, goals, and ideas, and to be creative. But unfortunately for us, it has really limited effect on human drive. I think it would be fair to put it right here at the bottom. Think about all of these times where you've seen that aesthetic gym routine TikTok, or you've heard some fitness influencer laying out how to get shredded in 3 days. You suddenly feel like, wow, I could really do that. You spend a day or 2 thinking about how cool it will be when you do or achieve this something, and then eventually you forget about it. This is something that I call a brain rot valley. It is that state where we're constantly getting nudged by small amounts of quick dopamine, and we almost feel the same pleasure and sense of achievement as though we've genuinely completed the task. For some, it could be consuming related content. For others, it could be discussing the thing with other people. One way or another, not a great state to be in. Even though it may feel nice, it's important to recognize that effectively we are achieving nothing. So, how do we avoid staying in the valley? This is where the second point, the action, comes in. Now, action, as you'll see later, is a crucial element of the loop. Action could either propel inertia from the inspiration stage, or it could be the independent source of it. Think about a time where you did something not because of your personal aspirations, but rather as a coincidence. Like following someone on that Saturday run, or randomly trying tennis just for the sake of it. Sometimes you'll find that doing the thing itself sparks some longing and motivation to improve and try again, pulling us further along the loop. Eventually, we may get to the third point of the loop, the result. Now, the result is the most powerful out of all 3 of them in terms of advancing us further. But as experience shows, it doesn't always depend on 2 previous points, and it doesn't appear every time we take action. As unfair and unfortunate as it is, in some cases, if not in most of them, the action will not lead to an instant result. Most of the hard things, whether it is getting fitter, finishing that essay, or pretty much anything, will take multiple rounds of action before any tangible result will be seen. If we imagine that the loop is subjected to some basic gravitational force, and we are a kind of a particle sliding along the thread, it appears that the initial climb from action all the way to the top and then towards the result is quite challenging. I imagine that every single of these 3 points gives us, or this particle, some energy or a little push. Some inspirations may give us more inertia. Some actions may be weaker in terms of that. All of this will define how we go and how we progress through the loop. Now, obviously, as we progress through our lives, we do not focus on achieving a single thing. As we try and balance between academics, physical health, and personal life, and much more, multiple threads appear. Everything compounds, becomes interconnected, and ends up looking something like this. Now, does this remind anyone of anything? I referred to physics concepts today a few times already. I like to make those links to parallel disciplines. It makes my nonsense sound a little bit more scientific and credible. So anyways, how about this? Resemble our idea? Or maybe even this. Now both the solar system and the atom have something in common here. Remove the sun from the center of our solar system or the nucleus from the atom, both will cease to exist. Planets will drift away in straight lines, electrons will disperse. Our solar system will collapse and the fundamental structure of matter will break down. It appears that we're missing something really important here. What is our center, the nucleus, the core? What is our anchor and the foundation of our motivation system that we just came up with? I believe it is the vision. Now, about a year ago, I was attending a similar talk, and one of the speakers was explaining how having a vision is much more effective than setting rigid aims, targets, and goals. Visions are much more aligned with how unpredictable and dynamic our lives can be. And they do not constrain us into as we progress in our achievement. But why are visions important in terms of our motivation? Like I've said before, none of the 3 elements of the loop are guaranteed to appear and give us enough inertia to progress through the loop. Imagine a situation where we didn't get enough of emotional kick or inspiration. That happens. Bad mood, series of unfortunate events, anything. Neither are we currently seeing an immediate result. Like I've said, big things take time and barely any come with instant gratification. This is where our vision is supposed to come into play. Like the sun's gravity, making planets constantly fall towards it, or a bunch of protons generating an electrostatic force keeping electrons in their orbits, vision is the heart of our motivation. It is what keeps us going regardless. Now, I wish I had more time to talk about how we can define our vision, how loops intertwine, intersect, how they break down and get replaced. I could also focus more on inertia and how repetition of tasks reduces resistance. Not only that, it is also interesting how physical motion and dopamine are linked by our biology and how they act within our reward system. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it for some other time. I want to end the talk like that. Pretty much everything that I've just laid out in front of you, you can forget almost instantaneously before you even leave the room. Not just that you can do it, I'm pretty certain that this is what's gonna happen. Beats me. The point of me being on stage here today was not to pound the whole loop concept or some physics laws into your heads. I'm well aware that this is one of the gazillion other frameworks, systems and models that humans came up with. I would actually rather you go and devise something better, something closer to you and your understanding of yourself. What I do hope you realize is no matter how inspired, envisioned, or disciplined you are, no change will ever happen without an action. You might get inspired here and there. You may even achieve some results without an explicit action. I didn't mean to start losing weight back in the day. It was just a combination of some consequences or circumstances. But even in such an unlikely situation, you'll have to eventually follow up with an effort. Action is what keeps you moving forward. So, to sum up, an object at rest remains at rest, and an object in motion remains in motion. I can bet almost anything that every person in the room has something that they've been meaning to do for a while now. We all have a hill to climb. So go and grab your running shoes today. Thank you.